Hello, my friend, and welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Mashpitz, and today is a solo episode of the podcast, and we are going to discuss why your brain keeps chasing new projects, new things, or new goals. Basically, this episode is about why we can't follow through on certain things. We discussed procrastination at length in episode 379 of this podcast. So pause, check that out, because this episode will go deeper on distraction and dispersion, and it builds off of the idea of procrastination. So first, let's define some terms. Dispersion is a different enemy than your run-of-the-mill distraction. Distraction is getting pulled off task. Dispersion is getting pulled off pursuit. One affects in the short term, the other in the long term. But it's a mistake to treat dispersion as the same thing as distraction. Because while distraction is obvious, you stop one task to do another, or you keep task switching, dispersion sneaks up on you on a way you rarely expect. Dispersion happens when you split focus across too many big pursuits. Your main business, your side hustle, a part-time investing project, being a parent, writing a book, doing this, doing that. Each one stealing time, energy, and cognitive bandwidth from the others. And it's the biggest enemy of success for really ambitious peak performers. In fact, eliminating this idea of dispersion and sustaining singular focus on one thing is an entry requirement for peak performance. So it masquerades and looks like productivity, but it kills depth, flow, and compounding progress. Remember, flow is the ultimate state a human being can be in, and deep focus is one of the triggers of flow. So unlike procrastination, again, which we talked about deeply in episode 379, which stalls action, dispersion dilutes it, quietly breaking your ability to go deep on one thing that you say matters most. So why does dispersion happen? Well, let's put ourselves, in this prehistoric idea, right? So picture yourself as a prehistoric human being, gathering food thousands of years ago. You come across a bush full of ripe berries, ripe blueberries, let's say. As you pick and eat them, you spot another bush in the distance with slightly darker berries. Do you stay with the current bounty or investigate the new one? Looking at the distant bush, your nucleus accumbens, very fancy, floods your brain with anticipatory dopamine. Under this neurochemical spell, you drop the berries you're eating and run to check out the other bush. So for context, the nucleus accumbens is a region in the brain's basal forebrain that plays a critical role in the reward circuit, pleasure reinforcement learning, and motivation. It is part of the basal ganglia and is involved in functions such as motivation, reward, and positive behavioral reinforcement. So now you know what that means. This scenario exemplifies the fundamental trade-off all organisms face: pursuing a known reward, that's sort of this idea of exploitation, versus sampling lesser known options, which is called exploration. Quick coffee break, so everyone drink your coffee. This is the neurological root of dispersion, why we struggle to stay focused on one pursuit long enough to achieve actual mastery or peak performance, or whatever you want to call it. Before the discovery of fire, this pattern served our survival, right? It was evolutionarily important. It doesn't serve us when trying to build a career, grow a business, be great parents, or develop true expertise in one certain area, whatever domain we might live in. Exploring is gathering sticks, vines, and leaves. Exploiting is building a shelter with them. Most people spend time just finding more and more and more and more sticks because it feels good. It requires minimal effort. You get that dopamine hit from the hunt, but you never build anything real, anything substantial. And so if you score high in openness to experience, which is from the big 5 personality traits, and most entrepreneurs do score very high on openness to experience, you are even more vulnerable to this type of pattern, which we just discussed. And so on the explore, exploit spectrum, there are three distinct archetypes that emerge from this spectrum. One being the explorer, right? Which constantly, this person who is the explorer constantly chases the next big idea, driven by novelty seeking and dopamine. You bounce between projects like a butterfly. You're never really focusing on one thing long enough to get meaningful results. And your resume really looks like, a graveyard of half-finished endeavors. And then you have the exploiter, right? This person commits to a singular pursuit, resisting urges to chase shiny objects. You dive deep into a craft, focusing for years to achieve mastery. While others get distracted, you persist through the boredom. But this hyper-focusing can make you potentially blind to valuable new opportunities. And then we go to the third archetype, which is the captain. This person masters switching between explore and exploit modes. You know exactly when to start something new versus when to double down on your current path. You explore just enough to spark creativity, but exploit long enough to produce tangible results. These ideas, these three archetypes, are from the Flow Research Collective, which I encourage everyone to check out if this information interests you and you want to go even more deep on this stuff. This is where I learned all of this information, even from procrastination on episode 379, all about flow, and this idea that we're talking about here of dispersion, distraction, and these different archetypes about exploit and explorer spectrum. And so the ideal is becoming the captain, a master of explore, exploit dynamics. But due to our biological tendency to overexplore, most people or most of us just never reach this level of being the master, of being the captain of our biology. But here's the thing about becoming a captain of your biology. The second you commit to one pursuit, the second you say, this is the thing that I'm going to go all in on, your brain starts fighting back with cognitive biases. First comes this novelty bias, which is like your mind will start whispering, wouldn't it be more fun if we just, start something new, right? Isn't the other thing over there more exciting? This project is starting to feel heavy, right? This is novelty bias. Then you have scarcity bias. You'll start to feel like, you're missing out. New opportunities will feel urgent. Dr. Michael Gervais calls this a FOPO. No, he calls it, he talks about FOPO, which is fear of other people's opinions. This is FOMO. Scarcity bias is FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Every podcaster you listen to will sound like they know something you don't, and you need to shift your focus to get in on the action. That's scarcity bias. And then right behind that comes present bias. Your brain will overvalue whatever's fast and easy. You'll catch yourself tempted by little wins, quick hits, dopamine snacks, things that feel good right now, but steal your progress later, right? These are all cognitive biases you have to conquer as you sustain focus. But as you master, these different dynamics, you'll gain a sustained singular focus, the ability to really zero in on a single pursuit without splitting attention across multiple priorities, right? Neurologically, not neurobiologically, neurologically, sustained singular focus shifts how your brain works. You get steadier dopamine signaling, which means more motivation with less volatility. You get more efficient learning as repeated practices myelinates neural pathways. You get better creative problem solving because your default mode network ruminates deeply on a single pursuit instead of skipping, like a scratched record. Right? You conserve willpower because you're not constantly, switching tasks or redeciding your priorities. You have a commitment. You have a singular focus. You get clarity of purpose because your attention isn't scattered across competing goals. You stop restarting the compounding curve every time you chase something new. The subjective benefits are equally powerful. You become exceptional at one thing rather than mediocre at many. Your work becomes more efficient, freeing up time for relationships and health. Purpose becomes clear, income grows more consistently as compounding returns accumulate. These are the benefits of being able to become the captain of your biology. This is what separates people who dabble for decades from people who build things that matter. It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's not luck, it's sustained, singular focus. It's becoming the captain of your biology. The hardest part isn't knowing this, the hardest part is doing it. Most of us are really puppet mastered by evolution, evolution's hidden hand. The path forward is seizing the strings yourself, becoming your own puppet master, the captain of your own biology, rather than succumbing to your neurobiological craving to explore. The best part is, to wrap this whole thing up, the best part is you have the power to make it happen. So use this episode as your blueprint and go get after it and have that sustained singular focus, because it's never been easier to get ahead. It's also never been easier to get distracted. And so you have the power to make it so, to become the captain of your biology, to understand these dynamics, to use this episode as a blueprint, find that sustained singular focus and create the life that you know you can. Because the best part is you have the power to make it happen. Not intelligence, not talent, not luck, just understanding these dynamics and finding that sustained singular focus and becoming the captain of your biology. So again, use this episode as your blueprint and go get after it. And if you found this episode valuable at all, please share with a friend so you guys can go at it and get after it together and create community and relationships around building your sustained singular focus and around becoming the captain of your own biology. So thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate you very much, and I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.